our world, but
the West,
Western.
the West, yes.
Yeah.
So they ate dogs, and they were very promiscuous, and they used their promiscuity as an excuse that this was a way that they could connect with the infinite, with their God, by coming to the climax of these pleasures. I want to be more explicit here. They were using this as an excuse for being promiscuous.
The way pagan worship today even does. I mean, there's a lot of, unfortunately, today, pagan worship in America that gets masked. I mean, a lot of it is masked, and it's not considered worship. But there's a lot of cultural investigation into hedonistic pleasures and the idea of opening up. And the passage where they're arguing about circumcision versus child sacrifice, I had in mind there are plenty of people in the West that think it's perfectly okay, and even in some cases appropriate, to abort fetuses, children, but circumcision is ugly and brutal and barbaric.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And that same dynamic played back then as it plays now, because it's very much about where your holiness is drawn from. If it's drawn from the nahash of kedusha, the snake of holiness, or the snake of the other side.
I can go even further on what you brought up, because it's making me think, how people can justify abortion because it's inconvenient for them to have a child, but they will continue with their pleasures in the future without thought of, maybe instead of killing the baby, I should just be less promiscuous, and when I do get pregnant, it's because I am in the proper situation to do that and to raise a child, and not just be so wanton about conceiving and then killing that fetus.
Yeah.
You write, the Bible. One of the things I love about the Bible is it doesn't hide the warts, the sins of our people, and it also is kind of they talk about incestuous relationships. They talk about, intimate relationships in the Bible. And your book actually continues with that. Some parts of your book, you're a religious man. We're a little bit saucy, I should say, maybe. Although you
tried to walk the line of being honest and not being
you did, because,
as explicit as...
Yes, you were not explicit. So it's safe reading, I guess, for youth. However, it was a iffy border there. So how did you decide to put that in?
Well, I tried not to be any more explicit than Chazal, than our sages, and they actually can be quite explicit. I mean, the idea that Orpah and Ruth are not only sisters, by the way, they're twins, which is significant according to Chazal, and the idea that she had relations, that Goliath is the product of 100 Plishtim.
Well, why don't you tell that story very briefly? And it's G-rated as you can.
Okay. Well, when she left Orpah, there's several things that the Chazal talks about her credit. That she hesitated in her leaving. She cried. She hugged. All these things brought actually a certain amount of schut on her part to merit
privilege.
Merit, right?
Merit.
Sorry.
Yes.
To merit a lot of things in the future, including having a child with Goliath. And I have her meeting the angel Samuel on the path, on the way to the Philistines. Some of this is imaginative, but she definitely was in that realm of mindset. And he guided her to the Philistine, where she found
the Philistines,
where she found a group of 100 men,
soldiers.
And she offered herself to them.
Mm-hmm.
And one sage often adds that she also became friendly with the dog that they had there as well.
Really?
Yes.
That you did not put in your novel.
I did. It's just very suggested.
You did. I didn't catch that.
Good. That's good, because it's only hinted at.
Uh-huh.
And then Goliath was actually the father of...
Goliath is Goliath, for anyone who doesn't know.
Goliath is actually the father of 3 other children that Orpah had later.
Yeah, so there was an incestuous relationship there, and that was encouraged by the Philistine culture.
Because it was the idea, which is a very Far Eastern concept, of that this world is really an illusion, and the only way that you can really smash the illusion... A lot of the ideas that I got of Avodah Zarah are actually found in Chazal, hinted at, and then I did a lot of research as well. But that there's an Eastern idea that you have to try and break all the taboos in order to realize and to rise above the illusion of the world, which is clearly not a Jewish idea at all.
All right, so Orpah leaves Ruth, and according to Chazal or Midrash, I could say maybe as well, she has a very flinging night with 100 Philistine soldiers. She goes back to Philistine, and she becomes a Philistine goddess, serving the goddess of pleasure. Is that true, or did you make up anything in this book at all?
I made up all the conversations are imagined.
But they fit with the story. They're true to the story.
God is not exactly an avatar. The God supposedly works through her like they would work through, allegedly, through the statues and the wood and all the other stuff. But it's suggested by Hazal in a lot of places, especially in areas where a lot of times when Hazal talks about weaving, and in dealing with Avodah Zarah, which
is idol worship.
Yeah, in idol worship and weaving, there's a connection throughout the Gemara about what this weaving is and how it's the channeling of impure energy and things along those lines. Hazal uses language to only suggest things so that people that would know otherwise wouldn't find it in a direct way. But I try and bring it out more, and a lot of it is imagined, but it's imagined along the lines of the Midrashim and the sages and things along those lines.
Right. The conversation stayed true to the text of the Bible. Now, there's a part in your book where, I had heard about and read about, and I'm familiar with the story of Orpah and her night of flinging, but I was not familiar with the story you give with Uriah. I knew that that David made a deal with him, but I didn't understand it under the circumstance. I wanted to find out if that was absolutely true or not, where you said that after David kills Goliath, he wants to take out the sword from the sheath that Goliath is wearing, and there's a special trick lock in it that only Uriah knows how to release, and he wants to take the sword and cut off Goliath's head to show as a trophy, to show the people back in Israel that he killed Goliath, and he makes a deal with him. And you say here that Uriah is a eunuch.
Yes.
Is that whole story true, where he makes this deal with David about being a eunuch and he's going to raise his wife as a daughter?
That's what Chazal says.
Okay, so tell our listeners that little story.
Okay, well, Uriah the Hittite, he's called a Hittite not because he was from the Hittite nation, but because he killed a lot of Hittites at one point in his career, according to the sages. But he was actually, according to the Ari, he's a Gilgul, a reincarnation of Samson, Shimshon HaGibor, Samson the Mighty. And because Samson went after his eyes, and he talks about how one eye is, he's asking for a revenge on one of his eyes. I'm forgetting all my English. Revenge on one of his eyes in the future, and another was for his future mate, his Olam Haba, his future wife, and which is connected to all this. Uriah is actually a reincarnation of him, and he's brought into the world as punishment for some of the things that Samson said without thinking. He's made a eunuch, and he stayed that way. But he asked for a eunuch, according to Torah, can't marry into the Jewish people because he can't bring children. So therefore, Uriah can't get married. However, he makes a deal with David at the time right after he takes off Goliath's head, he had some special tie, some special lock, according to the sages, that he couldn't. David went in without Shaul's sword. He left Saul's sword back at the camp, so he had no way of removing Goliath's head after he killed him with the stone. So he made a quick deal, which David pays for actually later, for bartering with the daughters of Israel. Mm-hmm. But he allows Uriah, because Bathsheba in the future is supposed to be David's wife. And Uriah knows this through Ruach HaKodesh, and David knows this through Ruach HaKodesh. They don't exactly necessarily know who or what.
Through divine inspiration, yes, okay.
He basically trades her off for a little bit of time, for a period of time, so that Uriah can raise her as a daughter, which is the way that she's described.
Now, where is this from? What source are you taking this story from?